The Ecuadorian people said no in all its 4 questions in the referendum proposed by President Daniel Noboa in a direct rejection of his government and proposals. On Monday, the COP30 Climate Summit in Brazil will enter its decisive stage after 6 days of negotiations. And the Chinese government has urged Japan to stop crossing lines as tensions rise after recent comments of Tokyo's Prime Minister regarding Taiwan. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Ecuador, the first preliminary results released by the National Electoral Council showed rejection in all 4 questions of the popular consultation and referendum. With more than half of the votes counted, the largest gap is in the referendum on drafting a new constitution, where the no vote leads with 60.8%. On the elimination of the ban on foreign military bases, the no vote stands at 59.1%. Meanwhile, on the reduction of the number of legislators in the National Assembly and the public financing of political parties, the no vote has a majority of 56.7% and 52.8% respectively. The public scrutiny is being carried out with the presence of representatives of social and political organizations, as well as national and international observers. The no vote that won in the referendum promoted by President Daniel Noboa sparked euphoric celebrations in Ecuador's major cities such as Quito and Guayaquil. Social organizations called on citizens to celebrate the triumph of the no as a victory for democracy and the 2008 Constitution. Opposition leaders were quick to interpret the result as a clear message from the electorate to the president, whom they accuse of attempting an authoritarian shift. This result marks an unavoidable turning point for the Noboa administration, forcing it to radically rethink its political and governing strategy. And after the results of the Ecuadorian national referendum, the president of the Citizens' Revolution Party, Luisa González, granted an exclusive interview to our multimedia platform where she highlighted the misuse of the budget by the government of President Noboa and how it affects the health and education sectors.
Millions of dollars spent in public relationships, into buying, voting. There's no proper strategy for the conducting of Ecuador, and there's a lot of things to use this money from the public arch, and it's not being used in an efficient way. They're not doing the proper use, but on the top of that, to pay the debt of the dialysis unit, we have more than 1,000 of renal patients in the dialysis clinics, and the next could be also to fix the educational infrastructure. We have more than 4,000 young adults that go out of the educational system, and we know now that the 60% that the criminal bands are formed by young persons. To rescue them is fundamental. We could have get the medicines to save life from the Ecuadorians. Almost the half of the population is from poverty to extreme poverty, going to the public hospitals, and as a result, we don't have even syringes. There are no meds. That's the proper use of the resources. The infrastructure from the streets, we have more and more deaths by traffic accidents because of the infrastructure. The roads and the state highways are reducing. The 60% did fail, and more. We have more ideas of investment, but they don't have how to manage the state. They only know about propaganda, and that's why the entire Ecuador is saying no to Ecuador is set against it, and is an abrupt fail what this government has now after this whole investment into the campaign.
Tough results in Chile. Tallies show a narrow difference between candidates Janet Jara and José Antonio Cast in the first round of the presidential elections. With more than 99% of the votes counted, data indicate that Jara is leading the tally with 26.8%, followed by Cast with 23.9%. With these results, the right wing secures majorities in both chambers, and thus Jara, the former minister under Presidents Boric and Cast, the son of a former Nazi military officer, would face each other in the presidential runoff on December 14th. Meanwhile, in third place is Franco Parisi with 18.4%, who conducted his campaign from abroad because he had a travel restriction order for failing to pay child support for his two children. In addition, Chileans will also renew all seats in the Chamber of Deputies and 23 of the 50 senators, with data indicating an advantage for the ruling coalition's Unidad por Chile bloc. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Monday, the COP30 Climate Summit in Brazil enters its decisive stage after 6 days of negotiations, in a context marked by demands from Amazonian indigenous peoples, civil society and developing countries. Ministers will take on a discussion board that remains stuck on the most sensitive points. The new emission reduction targets remain off the formal agenda, despite Brazil, the forum's host, insisting that the inclusion of issues depends exclusively on the will of the states. In parallel with the negotiations, the host country promoted a fund for the conservation of tropical forests, which has commitments totaling $5.5 billion and will operate under the logic of green capitalism, generating financial returns and allocating profits to forest protection after remunerating investors. And also staying in Brazil, the federal government passed the 7 billion reais to the right-wing state government of Pará for environmental projects in preparation for COP30. With 4 days left, 9 of these projects haven't been executed yet. Our correspondent Brian Meir has more.
Here in Belém, the People's Summit ended yesterday, an event with 30,000 participants from social movements, indigenous nations, and riverside communities all over Brazil and all over Latin America. And as COP30 continues until the 21st, now hundreds of representatives of these organizations are getting involved in parallel events and events inside the COP30 complex itself. I'm standing outside of the city's laboratory, where a group of people affiliated with the National People's Housing Union are listening to vindications from a residents association in a stilt house community on the river's edge near a huge gentrification project that's been partially financed by funding from the COP30 itself. The federal government passed on 7 billion reais, which is about $1.2 billion, to the right-wing governor's office and the right-wing mayor, both of them affiliated with Jair Bolsonaro, to build projects to improve the city for COP30, especially in the environmental area. Now, one of the projects was a massive sewage plant that was supposed to be installed right next to a stilt house community called Vila das Barcas but they only offered to hook up the system to the luxury apartments around the area without connecting it to the local community. Meanwhile, they're threatening the community members with evictions. But the project hasn't even begun yet. They've cleared a piece of land out, and people are wondering what's going to happen to the 9 projects that this $1.2 billion was sent to the local and state governments for that haven't been completed and in some cases haven't even been initiated yet. So that's one of the many battles that's going on today in the city of Belém around the COP30.
In other informations, we go to Venezuela. 135,000 doses of vaccines against measles, diphtheria, pneumococcus and rotavirus arrived as part of the binational cooperation with the Republic of India. With this incorporation, the comprehensive strategy to guarantee the protection and well-being of the Venezuelan people is strengthened, representing a step forward in the consolidation of the national public health system. In this sense, the authorities emphasize that this action is part of the diplomacy of peace and the cooperation agreements that Venezuela has with sister countries. It should be noted that Venezuela and India have also signed agreements in the digital sphere aimed at strengthening technological developments in key sectors such as education, government management and healthcare. In Santiago de Cuba, the delivery of international solidarity aid began to families affected by Hurricane Melissa. Supplies needed by families affected by the hurricane have arrived from different parts of the world, and Venezuela has been the main supplier with more than 8,000 tons of aid, including food, kitchen utensils and basic necessities. In this regard, Cuban authorities are supervising and expediting distribution to ensure that every family receives the solidarity resources. The joint brigades with Alba TCP are making progress in restoring electrical service in Santiago de Cuba as well as in several provinces affected by Hurricane Melissa in eastern Cuba. The Cuban government reported that local technicians are working together with the Venezuelan personnel sent to support more than 34,000 affected families. Priority is being given to the most vulnerable and complex areas of the eastern region due to the level of damage sustained by the infrastructure during the weather event. As part of the cooperation within the Bolivarian Alliance, Alba TCP in Holguin, the electrical system has been restored by 91%, followed by Granma at 95%, Montanamo at 99%, and finally Santiago de Cuba at 58%. In Palestine, excavation crews returned empty-handed from the eastern outskirts of Gaza City on Sunday after a full day of searching for the last remaining bodies. The Israeli hostages in Egypt also deployed excavation experts and equipment escorted by the International Committee of the Red Cross to assist in the recovery mission, but progress has been slow. Under the terms of the U.S. brokered ceasefire of October 10th, Israel is to return 15 Palestinian bodies for every Israeli handed over. The Hamas resistance movement has so far returned the corpses of 25 hostages, leaving 3 bodies still unaccounted for. The final remains are believed to be buried deep beneath rubble created during Israel's 2-year offensive on Gaza. The World Health Organization describes delays in critical medical evacuations as a death sentence, which have already killed more than 900 patients in the Gaza Strip. The World Health Organization reported that over 900 patients died in the Gaza Strip due to delayed medical evacuations to treatment centers outside the territory. According to the United Nations agency, approximately 16,500 patients are still waiting for approval to travel for treatment, including 4,000 children in critical condition. Since October 2023, Israeli bombings and airstrikes have destroyed Palestinian homes, hospitals and water networks throughout Gaza, leaving the infrastructure of the Palestinian territories in ruins. And we have a second short break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Our page and hit the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to From the South. Tensions between China and Japan escalate after Japanese Prime Minister's statements on the risk of military intervention if China takes action against Taiwan. This Sunday, Chinese military operations began with a naval patrol in the waters of the Senkaku Islands, controlled by Japan but claimed by China under the name of Diaoyu. This naval exercise is only the beginning of the large-scale maneuvers that Beijing will carry out in the Yellow Sea between Monday and Wednesday. China opposes the interference of other countries in Taiwan as it is an internal matter and a red line that no one should cross.
The provocative remarks on Taiwan recently made by Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi have seriously undermined the political foundation of China-Japan relations and worsened public sentiment between the two countries. The environment and conditions for the previous joint public opinion survey results have undergone major changes, requiring reconsideration of the relevance and timing of publishing the results. The responsibility for this lies entirely with the erroneous remarks of the Japanese leader. Regardless of which party or individual governs Japan, it must adhere to and honor the government's commitments on the Taiwan question. We urge Japan to act responsibly toward history and bilateral relations, stop crossing lines and playing with fire, retract its erroneous words and actions, and genuinely implement its commitments to China through concrete actions.
切实把对华承诺体现在实际行动上。
The Chinese Army Navy's Type 076 Sichuan amphibious assault ship completed its first sea trial. The three-day mission evaluated the propulsion and electrical systems of the locally built ship, among other equipment. The Sichuan will undergo further testing according to established plans. The ship began a new generation of amphibious assault vessels on the Chinese People's Liberation Army, has the capacity to transport helicopters, fixed-wing aircraft, and amphibious equipment thanks to its innovative electromagnetic technologies and catapult. And from China, experts from various nations gathered once again to discuss history, cooperation and international challenges at the Global South Academic Forum 2025, an event that seeks to generate concrete strategies for the region. Our correspondent Bruno Falsi brings us more details.
In Shanghai, academics and think tanks from various nations participated in the third edition of the Global South Academic Forum 2025. With more than 250 experts from 31 countries. The meeting offered a space to analyze the international situation and the challenges facing countries of the Global South.
Abordamos algunos temas que para nosotros, en nuestra experiencia, ha sido importante.
There is a major crisis currently affecting the United Nations system. It is a crisis we see when the world is unable at very least to resolve the genocide in Palestine or put a stop to it, or when it is enabled to halt the coercive and illegal measures against countries like Venezuela, Cuba, or the 30% of the world that is under this regime of illegal measures. nor has it been able to do anything effectively to stop the attacks that the United States is carrying out on the Caribbean coast. So the reflection there is on the importance of restoring international law.
The discussion also addressed how countries in the Global South are adopting new technologies to improve communication and coordinate actions, as well as the importance of the BRICS in the communication battle.
If we speak about BRICS, I think we have some gaps in communication today, and one of the gaps is language. We should choose, not language that we speak, a language in terms of communication as a general notion. So how can we discuss our issues, our problems, needs and questions? And the thing that united us today is AI adoption in newsrooms, which is, I think, a common problem and perspective for all newsrooms in the Global South.
The panels highlighted the importance of strengthening historical education, understanding liberation struggles, and shared process, strengthen common identity, and consolidates ties between countries of the Global South.
I spoke about the importance of really teaching strong historical consciousness to our students, because I'm at the Nelson Mandela University. So it's very important for us to be able to help students to develop a way of seeing themselves as members of the Global South, as also very strong members within the African community itself. Because once we develop that historical imagination and consciousness, then it really helps us to Global South together.
The forum concluded by highlighting the need to integrate academic, political, and technological efforts. Participants agreed that historical memory, innovation, and coordinated actions are key to strengthening the Global South on the international stage. Bruno Falsi, Shanghai, China, for teleSUR.
In other topics, more than 500,000 homes were left without electricity in the Russian territory of Donetsk after an attack by Ukrainian drones. The authorities of the Donetsk People's Republic reported that enemy forces tried to cause damage with combat drone attacks on the energy infrastructure, resulting in power outages in at least 4 regions. The governor of Donetsk said that the power supply has now been partially restored and that repair work is continuing to fully restore the service. For its part, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that air defense systems shut down 36 unmanned aerial vehicles in the last day and assert that Ukrainian drone attacks are common even in Russian civilian areas. In other topics, in Bangladesh, the International Crime Tribunal of Dhaka has sentenced former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to death for crimes against humanity over her government's management of student-led protests in 2024. The ousted politician was on trial in absentia since she fled the country in August last year, leaving neighboring India. 3-judge bench of the country's International Crimes Tribunal in Dhaka convicted Hasina of crimes including incitement, orders to kill, and inaction to prevent atrocities, as she is accused of oversaw a crackdown on student-led anti-government protests last year that left at least 1,400 people dead. Hasina had pledged not guilty to the charges and alleged the verdict was biased and politically motivated. The country's former Home Minister Dasam Hakan Kamal was also awarded the death penalty. Following their sentences, the Foreign Ministry of Bangladesh issued a statement calling on India to immediately hand over both convicted, stating that failing to comply would be a grave unfriendly act. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also, join us on social social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. And before closing, we'll leave you with some special images that seek to unite the Venezuelan and Latin American people. For teleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.